Dr. Magnus, this is Rick. How are you?
Good morning. You can call me Sandy, by the way, if you want to. That's fine.
Oh, well, thank you. It's great to have you with us on the program. Thank you for joining us, and I'm hearing you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, no problem. Loud and clear.
Okay, if you are set, let's go ahead, and we will do it here in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Dr. Sandra Magnus has been an important part of the U.S. space program. She's been on multiple space missions, was selected to the NASA Astronaut Corps in 1996, flew in space on the STS-112 shuttle mission in 2002, and on the final shuttle flight, STS-135 in 2011. She also flew to the International Space Station on STS-126 in 2008, serving as flight engineer and science officer on Expedition 18, returning home on STS-119 after 4.5 months on board. Dr. Magnus has received numerous awards, including the NASA Space Flight Medal, NASA Distinguished Service Medal, NASA Exceptional Service Medal. Today, she's Executive Director of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, the world's largest technical society dedicated to global aerospace profession, and she's co-chair for DiscoverE, an organization dedicated to supporting science and engineering education, fostering growth of a dynamic engineering profession in the U.S. And Dr. Sandy Magnus with us on today's This Week in America. Welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You know, you've spent years inspiring the next generation to pursue science, math, engineering careers, public outreach, of course, with NASA, now with the American Institute. What kind of progress are we making in opening up these fields to the young people?
Well, you know, it's getting better, even though we still have a long way to go. You know, I grew up, I was middle school in the late 70s. I entered high school in the late 70s, and when I was that age, I just didn't know engineering as a career choice existed. I knew the sciences, I knew math. You get a lot of exposure to that as a young person. But I didn't know engineering was a path. I picked physics, which, by the way, was spectacular, and I loved it. But I didn't have that option. And since then, there's been a lot of programs that have developed to bring engineering to students in that age group and younger, to get them excited about the idea of being able to use science and math to solve problems and things like that. But we still have a ways to go, even though we've made some progress. So it's a never-ending workload.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as you say, as you grow up in middle school, nobody was saying, hey, you're a girl and an astronaut is something that you can be. You said you caught the bug in middle school. It didn't really happen overnight. It was something that sort of evolved. What was it that got your interest?
You know, I think it's just I have a natural curiosity from when I was a child about how the world works. I drove my parents crazy asking them the question, why? I mean, everybody does that when they're 2, and I kept doing it. It made them nuts. They bought me this book, 200 Answers to the Question Why, or something like that. So I was always curious about the world, and the idea of flying into space and seeing the planet from orbit captured my imagination. The idea of pushing the boundaries and exploring what people can do and what we can learn, that was just fascinating for me, and that's kind of how I got hooked. And then, of course, I got to college, and I was studying physics, which was a great field to study because it's the basis of everything I went to do afterwards. But I got to college and discovered, oh, wow, you know, you can actually use this to go solve problems and create things. That's how that happens. You know, it connected a bunch of dots for me, and then I got intrigued with engineering as well as science as I got exposed to it. So that eventually led me to the astronaut office.
You had as a mentor, sort of a role model, Dr. Shannon Lucid. Talk about her. She is one of the pioneers in the early days. Well, I think she was, in the first astronaut class that included women. Talk about her because she went on. She really was a space pioneer.
She was, and actually I remember in 1978 when I was becoming a freshman in high school, they had this huge article on the hometown newspaper front page. It was, you know, NASA admits women to the program, and Shannon, of course, was one of those women. And I have to tell you, years later, when I got into the astronaut office in 1996, I shared an office with Shannon, and it was absolutely spectacular to meet her. I mean, all those women were amazing, but Shannon she's such a nice person, and she's such a good role model. And she went over and flew on the Mir space station as well. I don't know if you're aware of that, as part of her career. And,
yes.
And just solid, wonderful lady. And it was such a privilege to meet her and share an office with her and hear some of her stories about her path to the office. And it really made me appreciate the barriers that group had knocked down and the path that they showed me on how to get there. And that's why I think it's important for those of us that follow to continue that, that beacon effort, if you will.
What's it like when you continue that? When you're speaking to people, and these can be young kids or they can be college kids, when you see that look, that sort of spark in their eyes as you're explaining to them this is achievable, this is something you can do, when they realize that they can actually make that engineering, that math, that science background come to life.
I think it's one of the most rewarding experiences to be able to have that kind of impact on a young person and be a force for good, if you will, and encouraging them to follow their dreams. And when you're young, it's so easy to get discouraged by just a casual comment that an adult makes to you, even though they might not have meant anything by it, right? I mean, they absorb things like sponges, and so you have to be really careful how you approach comments to students. And so to be able to be a positive example for you can go do this. This is possible to go do this. These are things that are within your reach is really rewarding. And, I have to tell you, teachers are very instrumental in that because they interact with students on a daily basis, and they're a powerful, powerful force for good and for, that kind of encouragement. So I think we don't appreciate teachers the way we should in that sense.
Dr. Sandy Magnus with us on This Week in America, retired astronaut, engineer, now executive director of the American Institute for Aeronautics and Astronautics, and co-chair of DiscoverE. That's an organization that supports science and engineering education. You talk about the role of teachers. One of the programs at DiscoverE is the Educator Awards. Talk about that because it's really unique the way this is set up.
Yeah, it goes back to recognizing the importance of teachers and the impact that they can make on students' lives. And so the DiscoverE Educator Award program is it looks to celebrate the achievements and highlight the wonderful activities that teachers are doing to bring engineering into those early year classrooms. Unlike my experience where I had none, there are teachers out there who are working really diligently and energetically to bring engineering and the concepts of engineering and the possibility of what engineering can do for students to them in the K through 12 years. And so these Educator Awards highlight these teachers every year, and it's a great way to celebrate what some of our teachers are doing. And they're doing some spectacular things all over the country. I've interfaced with a lot of teachers over the last 18 years, and there are some really great people out there.
And you can get all the information at the website, DiscoverE, that's the letter E.org, and information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us, that you can link on directly. You're chosen for the astronaut corps in 1996. That first space mission was in, I believe, October of 2002. Talk about what that was like the first time you saw Earth. You opened the payload bay doors, and there is the Earth. What was that feeling like?
It's funny. I have a good story about that because I was actually in charge of opening the payload bay doors. That was one of my duties, and that's when you get the first glimpse of the Earth. And it's really amazing because without even thinking, it went straight from brain to mouth. I'm sure we've all had those moments. It went straight from brain to mouth, and what came out was, oh my goodness, our atmosphere is so thin because it's amazing. The Earth is so majestic and it's so beautiful. And at the same time, it's so fragile. It looks so incredibly fragile because you look down on it, you see this really thin layer of air around the planet, like an eggshell. And you realize, wow, we have to take care of this planet because it really looks fragile. And we kind of all know that intellectually because you can do the math and think, all right, so the circumference of the Earth is 25,000 plus miles, and then the people who climb Mount Everest, they need supplemental oxygen, and it's only 29,000 feet plus some change. So you can do the math and figure out, wow, that's a thin layer of air. But to see it, wow, it's like, wow, it was amazing. It's a beautiful planet.
And it was interesting in reading about your thoughts, and you talked about how fragile everything looked. Are we aware of that? I mean, we turn it into a political discussion rather than taking care of something that's there that needs care.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, if you've read some of the things that I talk about, you look at the Earth from space, and what you see is a spaceship, right?
Yes.
It's our spaceship. And in a spaceship, it's a closed system where everything that is going on in the spaceship affects other parts of the spaceship. And so you see the Earth is a closed system with everything connected. Everything that happens on the Earth affects other things that are happening on the Earth. You're not separate from somebody in China or someone in Africa or someone down in the Antarctic. What we're doing is affecting all of us. And so it's hard for us on the planet to understand this because it seems so huge compared to us. You know, we're sitting here having this conversation. I'm in D.C. I'm not quite sure geographically where you are, but you're in another part of the country, and then there's somebody out on a ship somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and we're having 3 different experiences of the planet, and we don't sense that they're connected. But from space, I will tell you, they are at some level. It might not be first order, but somewhere. And so it's hard for people to understand that, you know, and so that's why you end up with these conversations that are more immediate, you know, political and what's around us in our immediate environment. And I wish I could figure out how to, you know, take all those conversations up a level, and you know, it might mean that everybody has to go into space and look down on the planet and see it as a spaceship. I don't know, but it's a conundrum, you know.
Dr. Sandy Magnus with us on This Week in America, retired astronaut and engineer. It's interesting as you watch Space Station Live, and with the Internet, you can really follow what's going on at the space station, what's going on with the space program. And this really is an interesting concept, and one, cooperation comes to mind. And if we can sort of bottle the cooperation, you've worked with the European Space Agency, you've worked with Japan, you've worked with Russia, you worked with Brazil. It's, of course, a collaborative effort in the space station. We rely on Russia to get our astronauts there. Boy, it's a shame that we can't sort of bottle that and use that in real life to be able to get along with other people.
You know, I totally agree with you, and I think that's one of the, let's call it an intangible benefit, if you will, of the space station program that people don't really think about, is the fact that, oh my gosh, look, we've got all these countries with all of these different kind of agendas and languages and ways of doing things, but yet somehow for the last 20 years we've all been able to work together to achieve this goal, which is design, build, fly, and operate the space station. And it hasn't been easy, of course. We've had serious debates about how to do things or tensions when people disagree. But yet we've managed to work through it. And it really shows you what potential we have as human beings to work together if we decide that it's important enough and we put our energy and willpower to it. So I think that is a kind of an example of what could happen.
You were there for 4.5 months. Scott Kelly is just entering the second half of his 1-year stay. Talk about the importance of 1 year. Why that is crucial to the study of how the reaction to the body to 1 year there.
Yeah, well, you know, we've been hanging out as human beings in low Earth orbit for decades now, and we're slowly moving forward to reestablishing a human presence in beyond low Earth orbit, you know, with the Orion and the SLS system as the commercial industry, backfills into low Earth orbit. These are all good trends, and as we move beyond low Earth orbit, Mars is a common destination that people are talking about, and I think that will be the destination that we send people to. That's a very long trip with current technology. You know, it's a 6-month trip out, and if you're going to spend 6 months going there, you're certainly going to spend some time there, and then of course you return. And so people are going to be in space for 1.5 years or so, and so gaining more experience in our backyard, so to speak, is a very valuable research opportunity, and that's what NASA's doing in Russia as well with Michael Kornienko, who's up there with Scott. So it's a good piece of data.
You've talked about one of the misconceptions, and that's the cost involved in this. And this was a couple of years ago. I don't know whether the figures have changed some, but basically you're saying for every dollar we pay in taxes, 1/2 of 1 cent goes for the space program. It's not that much money, is it?
No, it's not. And actually it used to be when I first started at NASA in 1996, it was around 7/10 of a penny. So it was almost 3/4 of a penny. And now we're down to 1/2 a penny. And I think it's extremely unfortunate because if let's give NASA a penny, you know, of every dollar you're paying. They can do great things with that. Things that we're we're struggling to get done now because we have such a constrained budget there for that program. And it's kind of ironic, just to put it into a context, if you think about what your tax bill is and then take half a penny of every dollar you're paying, and then look at maybe your credit card bills or think about your family spending habits, most people are probably spending more money on fast food or pizza in a year than they're contributing to the space program through their tax dollars. So there is definitely some room to grow NASA's budget. It's unfortunate that it's becoming more constrained because we have all the other issues with the U.S. budget as far as the constrained money has been growing and the discretionary spending has been shrinking, and that trend doesn't look to reverse. We've got some fundamental questions we've been not dealing with as a country that have led to, essentially NASA's budget getting squeezed.
About a minute left in the program. Certainly not enough time, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Everybody looks at it from a cost-benefit standpoint. You were a science officer, did a number of research experiments while you were on board. Are they beneficial?
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny. Everything that we learn and do in space gets translated at some point into technology, approaches, policies, it depends on the kind of research, materials, products, and services that affect people on an everyday basis. And it happens so transparently that most people aren't even going to realize it. And there's a lot of, for example, portable medical equipment that people utilize on a daily basis to stay alive and have mobility and quality of life. That technology comes out of the space program. There are robotic techniques in surgery that came out of the space program. I use the health program because that impacts a lot of people. And this research, whether it's scientific research or technology demonstration and research, or things that were developed in order to be able to build the platforms to go do that. And a lot of the stuff came out of the space program and continues to do so. So it is very important.
I understand your recommendation for anybody lucky enough to go to space is on the menu, order cream spinach. I understand the cream spinach is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm a big spinach fan. The cream spinach is really good. The cherry blueberry cobbler is really good. There's some food that's not so good, but there's some food that's pretty good too. So.
With us on This Week in America, Dr. Sandy Magnus, time going by way too quickly, retired astronaut, engineer, executive director now of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, co-chair of DiscoverE, an organization that supports science and engineering education. The website is discoverE.org. Dr. Magnus, thank you for joining us on the program. Great to have you with us. Time went by too quickly. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I enjoyed myself very much.
You're listening to This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Sandy, that was fun. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's fun to share experiences, and it's really, I think, important to, again, open youth up to the possibilities in front of them. And so I enjoy doing that.
You're doing an excellent job in doing that. Thank you so much for being with us.
All right, very good.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Bye.